Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on what part of the world you are in. And we are here for another walk on the geek side where we are continuing with the appendices in the back of the Lord of the Rings. I am here with my friend Skep.
Hi, everybody.
And the lovable Sage.
Hello, Internet.
So, yeah, we're continuing this week with Eriador, Arnor, and the heirs of Isildur.
We're trying anyway, if we can get a word in edgewise over coughing.
Sorry.
Hey, I was doing that. I'm just over the crud myself. And that crud has made me not able to see my new granddaughter.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Yeah, because if you're sick, you can't go near a newborn.
Nope.
And it's cost me a week of granddaddy time. But
Oh,
anyway.
no. Catastrophe. Well, last time we basically got done with the Second Age. We ended up with the Battle of the Last Alliance, a sort of quick run through the Last Alliance. So I think we're basically ready to get started on the second part of Appendix A, i.e. the rulers of Arnor and the heirs of Isildur. Last time I realized that I did most of the talking, but since, again, as we snarked heavily about, this is actually Skep's baby, so I think I'm going to mostly shut up now and let him speak.
Yep.
Well, I don't think it should be mostly my baby, because I think that, frankly, you and Maddie have more interesting things to say than I do. My interest in the appendices at the end of the Return of the King are what an exercise in world building and backfilling it was. This something on this order. What other part of mythology did you ever see this done in? The one that comes to mind a little bit might be Lord Dunsany. Just through the sheer volume of stuff that he wrote about his mythic world, he can hold a candle maybe to J.R.R. Tolkien. This is what drew me in to Middle Earth. I don't know about you guys, but if I could go and live in Middle Earth, I would be off tomorrow.
Yeah.
I would spend my days happily in Middle Earth. And the reason, there are many reasons for that. It's a much simpler life. It's the values are more clearly defined, good and evil. And plus, most of the heavy lifting has been done. Sauron's been overthrown. So I think at this point, Middle Earth would be a very happy place to live. But I'm trying to figure out where you guys got to in Appendix A. For people who might be following along, if they were going through Appendix A.
Oh, Section 3.
Yeah.
Rulers of Eriador, Arnor, and the heirs of Isildur.
Okay, so so you're really out of the Second Age then.
Oh, completely. We finished with the fall of the we finished with the Battle of the Last Alliance, or the War of the Last Alliance, and the fall of Sauron last time.
And the one thing that we discovered last time is if you will take a look at the studio, StreamYards actually allows me to share the Kindle app.
Oh, really? Okay.
So we can kind of follow along.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of.
Let me kind of get over in the Streamlabs, and there you are. Yes.
Kind of, sort of, possibly, maybe follow along.
Yes. The Numenorian kings. I love Numenor.
For the people who don't have the novel.
Yep.
I'm just turning my own. Okay. So Eriador was full the name of the lands between Misty Mountains and the Blue in the south was bounded by the Grey Flood and Glanduin that flows into it above Tharbad. And I think I'll just read the rest of Appendix A for the remainder of the stream. I start to do this, and that's all I want to do. Doesn't it just suck you in? Doesn't it just draw you in?
Yes, I don't disagree. I'm just saying in that case, I think
it's not a realistic approach to the stream. I'm not seriously suggesting that.
No. I'm just saying in that case,
I just want other people to share the same childlike joy that I've gotten, and friends. I'm almost 70 years old. It's undiluted since I was a child. Since I was 13 years old and reading this for the first time. So it's, I sit and think about, what does the Gulf of Loon look like? What
blue?
Of course it looks blue. What do the Blue Mountains look like? They're blue.
Blue.
What do the Ash Mountains look like? What do the White Mountains look like?
Blue.
Some of them are white and some of them are ash colored. But I love the way that this is told in just perfect narrative form. One of the paragraphs begins, "It was in the beginning of the reign of Malvegal of Arthedain that evil came to Arnor. For at that time the realm of Angmar rose in the north beyond the Etten Moors. Its lands lay on both sides of the mountains, and there were gathered many evil men and orcs and other fell creatures. The lord of that land was known as the Witch King, but it was not known until later that he was indeed chief of the Ringwraiths, who came north with the purpose of destroying the Dunedain in Arnor, seeing hope in their disunion while Gondor was withdrawn." That ties in so beautifully to that fills out the Ringwraiths, as it were, to an extent, because it tells you about who the evil Witch King was, something about him. It makes him come alive, which is good, because even though he's kind of dead, I don't mean that as a joke. There's so many rich call outs as you go back through. One of the humorous ones is Arvaleg, son of Argaleb. Arvaleg, son of Argaleb, which
say that three times quickly after each other.
Which is hilariously called out in satire in the book Board of the Rings as Argle-Bargle the Fourth or something. He says, Arvaleg, son of Argle-Bargle the Fourth or something. That's still one of the funniest lines in that whole book. It's so, I don't take it so seriously that I can't have a bit of fun with it also. And anybody who has not read who was that, Doug Kenny, who wrote that? I know it was the Harvard Lampoon produced it, the Board of the Rings.
I can't remember who actually made it.
Yeah, it was. It might have been Douglas Kenny. I think
it was some college students mostly. To be honest.
It was the Harvard Lampoon. It was the Harvard Lampoon produced it. But I'm trying to think of the actual. There was one author in particular who wrote it, and it was either Doug Kenny or one of his friends at the Harvard Lampoon wrote it, and it's just great fun. They wrote another one called Doon, Doon, and they changed the spice to sugar and so forth, but that's not important right now. Anyway, it talks about, the narrative goes on to talk about plagues that happened, and how most of the people of Cardolan, which heretofore has just been a place name on a map. Especially in Minhiriath, which, I don't think Minhiriath is mentioned. How many more times in the entire Middle Earth knowledge base is Minhiriath mentioned, would you say?
Practically never. About
nothing. But here it's given a little bit of life, because that was where in the plague that came in the days of Argleb II hit the hardest. And so it makes that little part of the map come alive for me. Do you get some of the same feeling from reading this sort of thing?
Oh, always. That's why I love fluff. That's why, for instance, if we talk about Lord of the Rings books or whatever, Lord of the Rings, of course we're talking Lord of the Rings, but if we're talking role-play books or whatever, I buy fluff because I love world building.
Yeah.
I could spend the rest of my life doing world building if someone was idiotic enough to pay me for it.
Well, they pay for stupid stuff in Denmark, don't they?
Not
they
that
let
stupid.
you go to school for
Maybe
your
Sweden.
entire life.
Maybe Sweden.
So they're still sensible enough in Denmark to make you work.
Well, some of us.
Yeah.
Just enough to keep things flowing. But let's perhaps, before we go completely onwards, I agree with you on this one, but let's, before we go completely onwards, just not to confuse everyone, give a very quick outlook over what we are talking about here. Specifically, what we are talking about here is that Arnor, as we talked about last time, which was the northern realm of the Dunedain, Gondor's sister queendom, brother kingdom in the north, directly under the rule of Isildur, except that he never got there because he was killed on his way home, was kind of like Gondor, only in the north, and it spread across basically all of the lands that the Fellowship traveled in the Fellowship of the Ring until they hit Moria. That was originally Arnor.
Yeah.
Only around 800 years into the Third Age, it got split into 3 because the king's sons were fighting and arguing. This is part of where I love it, because this is part of where Tolkien knows his world's history. We already talked about how Gondor is perhaps a little bit problematic in the fact that it survived for 3,000 years, basically as a single father-to-son kingdom, more or less. But at the same time, Gondor is supposed to be... Well, I mean, Gondor had to survive because it's in the actual main narrative, but the northern Dunedain is much closer to our world, despite being also much closer to the remaining elves, which I always found sort of hilarious. But anyway, the Kingdom of Arnor was divided into 3. Arthedain, Rhudaur, and Cardolan, as Skep mentioned earlier. Minhiriath was part of Cardolan.
Right.
Cardolan is basically where Bree is in the movies and stretching south from that. Arthedain is the Shire going northwards, and Rhudaur is over near, basically over
down
near...
down and to the left.
Yeah, kind of. And of course, again, as we go forward, that might be what it be, but this is why basically the Northern Kingdom fell. The split between the 3 ensured that for 2 of those kingdoms, the line of Isildur died out fairly quickly, and to quote Tolkien so brilliantly, evil men seized power in Rhudaur. So when the Witch King, i.e. the leader of the Nazgul, had gotten enough power together to reform and decided to come north, because this is where he decided to come north and found the first great realm of evil in the Third Age, Khan Doom, which is another one of those wonderful names where you just hear it and say, yup, that dude is evil.
Yeah, yep.
There's absolutely no doubt that anyone who sits at a fortress called Khan Doom is probably not a breeder of small puppies he gives out to all and sundry.
Right.
And he could do that because the Dunedain was weak and divided, and Rhudaur was basically a semi-evil kingdom at this point. And that was basically... And the reason I want to go over this is basically that the kingship basically eventually died out in the north but this is where Aragorn's family is coming from. Because the kingdom eventually fell, they don't really need any kings anymore, but they do need chieftains for the surviving Dunedains, especially of the bloodline of Isildur. And that then eventually goes down to Aragorn about 1,000 years later.
One of the tantalizing things about that, by the way, is you wonder who Aragorn's cousins were and what they were like.
Truth.
True
enough.
I always want, because he would say, so there are a few of us left. Who else? What are they like? Where do they live? I really wanted to know that. And
I always assumed that Halbarat was one of his family, to be completely honest.
That's actually a great point. I can remember thinking, I wonder if he's Dunedain. And
well, he is. He's the leader of the Grey Company until they meet up with Aragorn. And I've always assumed that. But
of the same blood, of the
of the line of Isildur. Yeah, I've always assumed that he's family. To be honest, I always assumed that he was not of the primary bloodline, that is from Arathorn and Arador. That's Aragorn's father and grandfather. Right. I more specifically believes he might be his kin on his mother's side. I have nothing to base this on because in all of his writings, Tolkien never fleshes out either this family relationship or this individual.
And I have looked.
Yeah. I have just always assumed that, again, we're not talking movie here, guys, but for those of you who have read the books, in the books, instead of elves at Helm's Deep, after Helm's Deep, some Dunedain, about 30 of them, with the sons of Elrond, comes down from the north and travels with Aragorn for basically the rest of the books.
Right.
And their leader is a fellow by the name of Halbarat, who is... It's never stated outright, but it's basically...
It's implied strongly enough.
It's implied that he's basically Aragorn's second in command.
Right.
And, again, in a bloodline that, places so much emphasis on the bloodline, I've always assumed that he was family. Of course, he could be some totally random Dunedain who was just really good at what he was doing. I've just always assumed that he was...
we cannot know.
He was Aragorn's cousin on his mother's side.
Right. We can't know from what is written, but I agree with you that, that there was some distinguishing aspect of him. And I don't think it was strictly his capabilities, although those were quite substantial, obviously. But that it feels like he's family.
Yeah.
With Aragorn. So I quite agree with you. But
there's just something about their relationship that is a bit more than just some random dude. I mean, how many Dunedains are left at the end at the War of the Ring? How many of the northern Dunedain are left at the War of the Ring? We're never given a specific number, though we are told they are few, and they obviously cannot create an entire army. On the other hand, they can more or less keep the Shire and Breeland sort of safe, and they are mentioned at having several hidden villages throughout the north. So I have always assumed that there was somewhere between 500 to 1,000, including women and children.
Yeah.
Wow, I thought it was I thought it would maybe be a few hundred. That's my mental picture is a few hundred.
Possibly, but
why do you think it's so many? What?
Because you need. It's been 1,000 years.
Yeah.
You need some numbers, no matter how you take a look at it. You need some numbers to perpetuate
the critical mass that it takes to keep the gene pool kind of.
I mean, they are obviously dwindling. There's no doubt. I'm just saying, if there's only a few hundred, I don't think they would have lasted for 1,000 years.
And they wouldn't have been able to cover as much ground as they do.
They wouldn't have been able to protect the Shire from.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Although remember their generations are much longer than normal generations because of their long life. So they don't have 25-year generations. They basically have 75-year generations.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we're told that, told that Aragorn's father is very young when he dies. This is later in this very appendix. When Aragorn's father died, he is very young. He is, I think, around 60, if you do the calculations. I think maybe 40, somewhere between 40 and 60. And Aragorn is newborn when he goes down.
Yes.
And he's described as very young.
To change the subject slightly, one of the things, in fact, I was just getting to it, that I love the way you're going along and you're talking about, let's see what, in 1974, the power of Angmar rose again, and you hear about the battle for Fornost and all that stuff, and for a while, Arvedui hid in the tunnels of the old dwarf mines near the far end of the mountains, but he was driven at last by hunger to seek the help of Lossoth, the snowmen of Foroshel.
Yeah, basically.
And then you get a footnote there, and says these are a strange, unfriendly people, remnant of the Forodwaith, men of far off days, accustomed to the bitter colds of the realm of Morgoth. Indeed, those colds linger still in those regions, though they lie hardly more than 100 leagues north of the Shire. The Lossoth house in the snow. House in the snow, and it is said that they can run on ice with bones on their feet and have carts without wheels. They live mostly inaccessible to their enemies on the great cape of Foroshel that shuts off the northwest from the immense bay of that name, but they often camp at the south shore of the bay at the foot of the mountains. That's just fascinating to me. That is absolutely fascinating. And then set against that, that's a few hundred miles. And so in the next paragraph comes up, the Shire folk survived, though war swept over them, and most of them fled into hiding. So here we get to, first talking a little bit about the Shire. And it says, afterwards in the peace that followed, the Shire folks ruled themselves and prospered. They chose a Thane, which harkens back to Pippin, obviously, the Tooks, at least it does to me, to take the place of the king.
Even if it wasn't the Tooks originally, yeah.
Exactly. Let's see.
But I think we're skipping here. I understand what you're saying, and I get what you're saying, but I think we're skipping, because I think there's one thing we have to talk about which appears in this particular appendix. The actual kings don't particularly matter. What do matter is that I've already touched upon it, but you touched upon it at the same time. The Witch King of Angmar.
Yes.
The ruler of the Nazgul, the great lieutenant of Sauron. He is mentioned as that repeatedly throughout the movies. The Witch King of Angmar. What the movies never bothers to explain is, what is Angmar? Well, Angmar was, as I mentioned, the first evil kingdom of the Third Age. I mean, supernatural evil kingdom of the Third Age, and it was founded at the very edge of one of the northern mountain ranges. And this is basically where the Witch King got that before. Before that, he would probably just have been known as the leader of the Nazgul, or the Chief Nazgul, or the Black Captain, or whatever you wish to call him at the end of the Second Age. It is because he is the Witch King, the Sorcerer King of Angmar, that he has this title. And Angmar, this is basically the fate of the Northern Kingdoms. The Northern Kingdoms spend, I think, 1,000 years fighting with Angmar until they are finally overthrown. And why I want to mention this specifically is that you can't really discuss sort of things like Arvedui or the Battle of Fornost or whatever without having at least an idea of what Angmar is and what it did. especially because it also. I mean, we're discussing this. We're still discussing this, I suppose, to a certain degree, as it refers to the books and in the movies. And what the final battles against Angmar has, it has the explanation for the goddamn prophecy about the Witch King's destruction.
No man can kill me.
Yeah, well, kind of. That's not what the prophecy
it's
actually
not exactly
says,
what it says, but that's what
I suppose that's the point.
Yeah.
What happens is that at the very, very end of the wars against Angmar, the good guys are losing. They're dead. They're finished. They're destroyed. The entire kingdom is broken, and the king is fleeing with as many of the northern Palantirs as he can get his hands on, and as mentioned before, hiding out in some old dwarf tunnels. Probably the last sad remains of Nokrod, a dwarven kingdom from the First Age, if you put the cards together. But that's irrelevant. What is relevant is that Gondor at this point is still very powerful. They are sending a fleet to the north, allying with the elves and crushing Angmar. This crushing of Angmar does one thing. It gives the Shire...
What year are you in now?
1974.
Oh, 1974? Okay. Not 1979. Okay, go.
1974, Third Age years,
right.
Of course. It gives the Shire a chance to... At this point, the Shire is only basically about 500 years old. And not really all that established, to be honest, because there's been war ever since. So it gives the Shire... The destruction of Angmar gives the Shire a chance to develop as it does, because it removes both humans and orcs and basically everyone from around it, except for the elves, who were seriously minding their own business. But it also, as I said, the very end of the Northern War, the Crown Prince of Gondor and Glorfindel, our own friend Glorfindel, from who finds...
Are you talking about Emir?
No, I'm talking about the prophecy. Eanor. Yeah, Eanor.
Okay.
Oh, Eanor, yeah. But the point is, the Crown Prince of Gondor and Glorfindel is fighting against the Witch King.
And that is the same Glorfindel who you find in the books.
Yep,
but anyway,
the books, yep. Our Glorfindel, the one who finds the company and takes them to Rivendell.
Yeah, leaves the barrel on the bridge.
Yeah. The point is that the Crown Prince of Gondor really wants to fight the Witch King as the Witch King is fleeing, but he is held back, and Glorfindel basically states, do not perceive him. Far away is his doom, and it will not be at the hands of a man.
Right.
Which is where the whole goddamn prophecy comes from. And this is...
It's restated elsewhere. The Witch King of Angmar, whom it is asserted no man can kill.
Yeah, but this is my point. This is where I get the whole childlike joy of it. I mean, to the certain degree, as it refers to the main narrative. This is all background material as it feeds into Aragon and the whole state of the North at this time, and it's amazing. But basically, the entire damn thing can be chopped down to, as it refers to the narrative, this moment there, 2 lines. Glorfindel and Eanor, is the Crown Prince of Gondor, is chasing down the Witch King. He runs away, and Glorfindel says speaks the prophecy. This is basically a 40-page appendix to explain how the dude is actually taken down.
Do not pursue him. He will not return to these lands. Far off yet is his doom, and by the hand of man, not by the hand of man shall he fall.
Mm-hmm. Of course, as we get into Gondor, we will get back to those 2 particular individuals.
And of course, the Witch King.
They are very relevant. The Witch King and
he
Eanor,
destroyed the North Kingdom at this point, and he heads to North Angmar, I think.
Yeah. And again, what's primarily relevant about this is the fact that Maddie, this is just tragic. I am sorry. I am very, very sorry.
Okay. I didn't want to interrupt you guys. So
The problem is we're actually moved a bit forward because we're actually in the Gondor section now.
We're in Gondor now, so sorry.
Okay.
We're
Sorry.
actually down in Gondor now.
Yeah. We have left a ride, or we're out of there.
Okay, so what happens next? Because this is relevant. Again, last time we went over the thing a lot more chronological. This time I think we're talking more themes and
Topically, yes. Very much so.
and topically. But
Yes.
this is one of those things where Tolkien just makes shit works. Because okay, you read through the entire Arnor thing, and you get down to Aragorn. And there is interesting stuff all the way down. And then you get to Gondor and you go through 2,000 years of Gondor history. Some of it is incredibly interesting. The Kinstrife, a massive civil war.
Absolutely. People think they know Tolkien and they never heard of the Kinstrife.
No. The ship kings. Everything about this. And then, like 40 pages or something, close enough anyway, 20 pages after you heard about the prophecy, you get back to this crown prince who becomes king of Gondor and then rides off to have a one-on-one fight with the Witch King and disappears. Just disappears. No one knows what happens to him. Everyone assumed that he was tortured and killed. But then this is the fall of the kings. This is the last king. Yeah. 40 pages later, you've completely forgot. If you were new to this, you've probably completely forgotten about this dude. Here he is again, and this is where the line of kings in Gondor ends and the rule of stewards begin.
Yep. I mean, as a writer, as somebody who's writing, sci-fi, fantasy fiction, or a conglomeration of the two, you have to build your world. You have to give people an idea of, what is what, who is who, what is happening. Otherwise, you can't immerse people in your world when you start telling these stories. When you start, having these, when you start writing these short stories or these long novels or anything, because there's going to be people that's going to fall in love with your work like we have and go, there's got to be more than just the books. What happened here, and why is he wandering, and what happened to this person after this happened, and there's always questions in your mind, even though this big epic tale wrapped itself up. It was like, okay, they're explaining to us who Aragorn is, but why are they scattered? What happened? And it's how did he wind up where he was at before he met up with Frodo and them? And you have two options. You either wind up having an author that doesn't give you these ideas or answer these questions, or you do what Tolkien did and go, okay, let me expand this and give people who are, who have a thirst for more, hopefully give them the answers that they're looking for.
Yep. But I'm just saying, my point is just, Tolkien is an expert in that, more than probably anyone I've ever met or read,
or heard of.
To a certain degree, maybe you could argue, Frank Herbert, in my opinion.
In his way, maybe.
In his way, but at the same time, no, nothing to this degree.
Not extensive, though. Yeah,
no.
This is why I love it. This is why, people say, well, Game of Thrones is just as good. Shut up. Shut your mouth. Sew your lips together. God.
At its core, and this is from somebody who's only seen the movies and not watched the show and not read the books of the Game of Thrones. If you take out all the pomp and circumstance, all it is a bunch of people fighting for power.
Yes.
Positioning themselves, being petty, backstabbing, and what have you, and that's all it is. This is so much more.
Well, there is a lot of fighting for power. That
No kidding.
I mean, I was thinking about just case in point the Kinstrife, which basically happens. That's third age, if memory serves.
Yes,
and about 14 or 1500. There's basically a marriage to a northern kingdom, pisses off the Numenorians. Chaos
if you want
ensues.
to do that, explain. If you want to do that, explain to the people what it is. That's basically why we're here. Mm-hmm. You're talking about. You can actually see it here. It's on the top of what Maddie has now.
I'm sorry,
the Kinstrife.
I wasn't looking.
No, that's not my point. And again, I'm sounding more aggressive than I mean to. I'm just saying, I am pretty certain that not everyone who is watching this stream will have any idea what we're talking about. This is why I try to explain sort of
you're
what
trying
we're
to make
talking
it clear
about at all points.
Yes,
You said it yourself. There are people who have no idea what the Kinstrife is. Correct?
No, that's it.
This is why we should explain it.
Exactly. So, but basically, it was, as I said, around, what was it?
1430
something, 1432, 1439, something like that.
In Gondor.
In Gondor, I think the guy's name was Eldakar.
No, that was the son.
Oh, was that the son?
That was the dude who got thrown out for a bit.
Okay. But maybe it was Valakar. Anyway,
it's on the screen.
Oh, I'm
it's
sorry.
It's literally on the screen right now.
I wasn't looking at it.
It's Minalcar.
Minalcar. That was his name. I was trying to think of what his name was. I'm trying to do it from memory. Yep. All right. Let's see. Yeah, he was regent.
I can tell the story.
I'm thinking of was like 200 years later, though.
I can tell the story if you want, then you can talk about what you want, what the point you have with it while I go pee.
Yeah, well, yeah, the okay, go ahead and tell the story.
All right. Gondor had been fighting a war with some Easterlings. They are doing that constantly. One thing Gondor is doing is, this is something I want to get back to a bit later, but one thing Gondor is doing throughout its history is fighting wars with peoples from the east.
Right.
And at one point they are winning a great battle with the help of some other humans living north of them, actually up near Mirkwood. It was Sauron's,
the home of the necromancer.
Yeah, Dol Guldur. Another tribe of human or peoples of humans are living up there. They are helping Gondor against these people. Gondor is weakened at this point, not as much as they would be later, but they are weakened from their height of their power. So the king basically marries off his son to the daughter of one of these Northmen. And of course, this worries the, shall we call it, the conservative faction or the reactionary faction.
Well, the Numenorians, they were really...
And not all of them. The reactionary Numenorian nobility in Gondor, because what would happen to the bloodline when it's mixed with short livers? Basically, would we have a king that has their Numenorian bloodline, Numenorian powers, that means extra life and so on, diluted?
It was that national state controversy.
Kind of to a degree, yeah.
It really was.
Of course, this prince who married this girl have a son eventually. Now, the woman, the queen, dies very early for a Numenorian queen or for a Gondorian queen. Obviously, she's a standard human. She dies probably around... I actually think it says that she lived to a great age. So let's see, she survived until 90. At that point, her husband still had about another 100 years to go, at the very least. So there is a civil war in Gondor between the descendants of a previous king and this new fellow by the name of Eldakar. He's the half-breed. That's not a good word for it, but I don't really know what else to say. The mixed blood rightful ruler. Well, the reactionary faction kicks him out and puts in a usurper until about 10 years later, when that usurper has made himself so very unpopular that Eldakar comes back and kicks him out and reestablishes the original line of the kings. That is the Kinstrife, and I will now go on a bio break. And Skep, you can get on with what you wanted to say.
Sure. Well, when Eldikar succeeds his father, okay, what was an uneasy time quickly flashed into what amounted to a small civil war. It was open rebellion. Many people saw Eldikar as a half-breed, and therefore he didn't have as much legitimacy, and this was particularly true in the Numenorians who were living in the coastal provinces, the more conservative Numenorians living in the coastal provinces, in the southern part of Gondor. He had a cousin by the name of Castamir with the terrific title. They called him Castamir the Usurper, and he was known as the Lord of Ships. And he was a Numenorian conservative, and he usurped the throne, forcing Eldikar into exile. Saying, Eldikar, you're a half-breed. You have to go into exile. Castamir was supported by the people of the realm of Umbar, which is down South Gondor way, who sought revenge against Gondor. During the rebellion, Osgiliath was sacked by Numenorians, and the Dome of Stars was lost along with the Palantir. That's when the Palantir was lost from Osgiliath. So Castamir also murdered Eldikar's son, or Mendil or Nendil or something like that. Anyway, and then Eldikar, he says, "I'm out of here." He heads up to Rovanion up in the northwest, and Castamir said, "Fine, I've got Gondor. I'll rule here." So 10 years later, Eldikar comes back with a bunch of guys, a bunch of troops he's raised from Rovanion, and Castamir has been a cruel ruler, and so there was a lot of unrest in Gondor, and there were evidently, I think there was a rebellion against Castamir that had nothing to do with Eldikar. Eldikar comes back with his troops, his Rovanion troops, intending to take it back over. So he makes war on Castamir, and he kills him at the Battle of Erui. And Castamir's sons and many of their supporters fled south to Umbar. Eldikar would not follow them as the fleet was under Castamir's control. So as a result of the conflict, Gondor lost the city of Umbar for 4 centuries and gained a new enemy in the Corsairs of Umbar and the descendants of Castamir's son. That's how that estrangement happened. And many of the Gondorians of Numenorian blood were killed during the Civil War. And that's just a huge loss. It had to just be damaging to that country. That might be the most significant loss of that conflict. And Gondor was even further weakened. So anyway, that's just the part I wanted to point out about the Kinstrife.
To make a point about just how significant this was, the fellows that Aragorn takes his ghost army out on are basically these people.
Yes. Yeah, that's stock. That's for sure.
Not really descendants of Castamir the Usurper, because they've already been killed several centuries earlier. I think almost 1,000 years earlier.
No, but it's that stock of people.
But it's that particular thing, and that's the whole story about Gondor. The slow weakening. Going from around the same time as Arnor falls, Gondor is at the height of its power. The very height of its power. And from then on, it's about 2,000 years of slow decline, still standing as basically the only bastion the West has against the invasion from the south and east.
And on that note, now that we have a little hello, new people that have come in, as we have 9 people watching now. Thank you very much, and welcome to Maddie's House of Geek. If you haven't yet, there's that subscribe button. Hit that like button if you like what you're hearing. We're going through and doing a deeper dive into the Lord of the Rings by going through the appendices. This is the second live stream that we are doing this in. We're going to probably be in the appendices for the next couple of weeks. So if you like the Lord of the Rings and you like deep diving into lore, stay tuned. At the end of the stream, I will tell you how often we do this, so you guys can put it on your calendars and come and visit us. But thank you very much for the support. And if you'd like to contribute anything, all that stuff is in the description box below the stream. Okay, guys.
Okay. Very nice.
Okay. Do we talk about the invasion of the Wayne Riders?
I think so, because that's probably the most... I have mentioned now a couple of times that Gondor spent a lot of its time fighting against invasions from the east, and the Wayne Riders are probably the most interesting of the bunch, just because of the influence it had on the kingdom and the West in general.
Yep. And Wayne, to me, means wagon.
Oh, it does.
Okay,
that's exactly what it means.
But for anybody who's wondering what a Wayne Rider is, and they came from the east. Basically, they were kind of a conglomeration of people, weren't they?
Yeah.
And they came in, wheeled carts and chariots, and they were. I don't know if they were officially emissaries of Sauron or what the relationship was, because it doesn't. I don't remember that being detailed what the relationship was with Sauron.
The thing is, Sauron didn't really have any... Tolkien makes it clear that basically all of Gondor's enemies, in the end, are inspired by Sauron. Sauron and his emissaries in the east, or just his influence in the east. But at this point, Sauron is still... I don't even think at this point Sauron has fully taken shape yet in Dol Guldur. Sauron is, even if he has, he's stuck over there and not really
probably not doing anything more than being malevolent and trying to marshal malevolent.
But Sauron had been in control. What is going on here is that Sauron had been in control of basically the entire eastern part of Middle-earth up until the Battle of the Last Alliance.
Right.
So even with, and they have probably, the ancestors of these people had probably fought for Sauron during the War of the Last Alliance, and even without that, they might have had memories about the evil Númenóreans during the, as we mentioned last time, the latter age of Númenor, when they became a very cruel colonizer empire, colonial empire. So it's not so much that Sauron probably had anything sort of, not consciously, but anything directly to do with the invasions, but they served his will by fighting against Gondor.
They did. And the interesting thing about the Wayne Riders is they seem to have some kind of ability to attract either soldiers of fortune or, some kind of evangelical call, because they didn't just come in. It says, famously in the thing that they came from the east, but they didn't just, and so you think, well, they got tired of hunting the wild kine and rune and, journeyed over the steppes and crossed down that way. But they actually came, a lot of them came from, and possibly even most of them came from south of Mordor, came up from the south and through Ithilien, and approached Gondor that way. In doing so, they picked up fellow travelers from like Khand and Nearherod and
all of them kingdoms south and east of Gondor.
Exactly, and they
and all of them enemies of Gondor, one way or the other.
Exactly, and said, "Hey, come with us. We're going to go fight Gondor. Plenty of spoils." And it's that was kind of their message, and so that's what confronted a weakened and steadily weakening Gondor, which was weakening in every way imaginable. You know, the bloodlines were failing. The kings and stewards, the intellectual class of Gondor was becoming introspective and snowflakey, very much like the academia in the United States is right now.
I don't know if you can say that, to be completely honest, but go on.
Well, I'm thinking about the monuments that they made in the City of the Dead.
Yeah, but I mean,
that's a sign to me of decadence.
I disagree, but we can get on with that. We can do that later. We're talking about the Wayne Riders right now.
Okay. So anyway, that's but that's what Gondor was confronted with. What did you want to say about the Wayne Riders?
You were dealing with the Wayne Riders. I didn't really have anything particular about the Wayne Riders. I just love the whole idea about the Wayne Riders because of their influence. The Wayne Riders was sort of like... The Wayne Riders was the example of, just the most perfect example of what Gondor had to deal with. They allied with basically all of their enemies and attacked them mercilessly, but more importantly, they are an example of just how resilient Gondor and the Dunedains are.
Right.
Gondor had two great armies. Okay, so their main army, the North Army, led by the king and all of his sons, basically meets the Wayne Riders and gets slaughtered.
Yeah, they got their asses kicked, but it was the Southern Army, wasn't it?
Yeah. So the main army with the king, both his elder sons, his youngest son had been ordered to stay home because, you know, maybe having the king and all of his sons going to war at the same time is a terrible idea.
Mm-hmm.
But he snuck out. Sorry?
Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Just send the entire royal family out there, you know, no problem.
So he snuck out anyway, and he snuck out anyway, and the king, all of his sons are killed, and the primary army of Gondor is routed. Well, okay, we know Gondor survives because they're there in the narrative 1,000 years later. So how do they survive? Oh, super easy. The South Army wins a great battle where they are, and then force marches up north and slaughters the Wayne Riders, slaughters the Northern Army.
Who are celebrating their victory over the Northern Army.
They are basically attacking them in the middle of the Great Victory Feast. A good example, by the way, of military tactics about, you know, following up on victory rather than this is... Oh my... Tolkien wasn't a military historian as such, but he would know just how many campaigns and wars have been lost over the years because people who were otherwise winning suddenly decided to sit down and have a feast.
Right.
Literally.
Killed during mid-bloat.
Yeah. What I wanted to get around to was that this is where something interesting happens. Because the king is dead. What does Gondor do? Well, we say the southern general, the victorious guy, is also of the royal family, if very, very far out. He is of the kin. We choose him as a king. And Gondor goes on. I'm just saying this is basically what I like about Tolkien's creation of Gondor. It's a good example about how a fantasy country can be resilient enough to survive for 3,000 years without it seeming completely Deus Ex Machina hokey. Of course, less than 100 years later, less than 60 years later, basically, Gondor is out of kings. And I think we actually want to discuss this because this is in the appendices as well. So this victorious general Eärnil becomes a king, and he becomes a good king.
Yeah, he's like the second to last king, though.
Yeah. But he's a good king. His son, on the other hand, is called Eärnur. We have been with him before. He was the one who tried to kill the Witch King up north, and he is a hothead, basically. He is primarily... What is that in the background? Did someone just fart?
No.
Sorry. Anyway, his son, Eonor, is a hothead. He's primarily interested in war and not necessarily in good governance. This is not necessarily a bad thing. Gondor sometimes need warlike kings. The only thing is he also has some personal, shall we call it, pride issues.
Yes.
So, in the year 2000, actually, third age of the sun, the year 2000, the Witch King and the Nazgul are finally together again, and they are leading an army out of Mordor and besieges and takes Minas Ithil, one of the 3 great cities of Gondor.
Yep.
This is the second time they have done that, by the way. 2,000 years before, they did it just before the Battle of the Last Alliance, so I figured it was basically like, oh, well, here we are again. Except that this time, they stick to it. And of course, Minas Ithil, that they take there, is what becomes Minas Morgul at the time of the books. So they hang on to it for quite a while.
It gets a handsome green paint job.
I love what they've done with the place. I mean, the big laser beam really ties the room together.
Yes, I agree. I quite agree.
Nothing says evil like a lime green glow.
Exactly.
That was sinister to me.
Yeah.
No, it worked perfectly to me. I loved it.
Yes, I did too.
design.
I thought it was absolutely perfect. I really did.
But anyway, the Witch King then decides, hey, the guy who is king of Gondor right now is the guy that I had sort of a fight with up north. So the Witch King basically says, hey, dude, why don't you take 2 or 3 guys and come over here and we'll have a one-on-one. Mano a mano. Let's settle it once and for all. Just come to my place. We'll have a quick fight, and then we'll have tea and biscuits. And
great.
the king being slightly how to put it, slightly hot-headed at this point. At this point he's still the crown prince.
He was a man like his father in valor, but not in wisdom.
Yeah. So basically, at this point he's crown prince, and his father says absolutely not. But eventually, of course, Eonil dies, and Eonor becomes king, and the Witch King says, "Let's do it, dude! Come on! At this point, however, the king's first counselor says, "This is a really bad idea. This is like the Witch King. He's not exactly known for being sporting." So the king decides, okay, fuck it. I can't do this. So what does the Witch King do? 7 years later, he's basically like, what was it about that fight, dude? Huh, that fight we were talking about. Come on, McFly. Are you chicken? Chicken? And, Eonor decides to say, fuck that, and rides over there with a small company of knights and disappears. No one knows what happens to him. If I remember correctly, the Lord of the Rings online game uses him as a villain at one point, but I'm not entirely certain. Maddie, this is your area of expertise.
In Arnor, I haven't. When you play as the High Elves, you go looking for someone who disappears, and it may be Eonor, I can't remember. And by the time you confront the Witch King says he's already taken him away. So
yeah. Anyway, it doesn't even particularly matter. The point is that the Witch King he kills the king. He kills the king of Gondor, traps him, imprisons him, tortures him to death. We don't know what he does, but I mean, it's the leader of the Nazgul. I'm sure people can imagine.
Yeah, he likely died in torment in Minas Morgul.
Yeah,
and so Martel, the guy who, the steward guy who, the advisor who, I told you not, he becomes the steward.
Yeah, this is where the line of Gondorian kings end. This is where the time of stewards begin. The original ancestor, not the original ancestor, but if you take Boromir, Faramir, and Denethor, the one they counted as the ancestor, their primary ancestor, the founder of their family, is this is actually this dude Mardil. Well, it's actually his father, but mostly it's this dude Mardil because he becomes the first ruling steward. However, the thing is, there is still the line of Isildur. This is where things get interesting, because there's still the line of Isildur up north. This is the line of a Narian that has ended.
Right.
The line of Isildur is still up north, and they have married into the royal house of Gondor repeatedly. And they had even tried to claim the kingship remember when Eärnil became king after the king died with his sons against the Wainriders? At that point, the king of Arnor tried to become king of Gondor as well, because he was married to the king's daughter, basically. And the interesting thing there is not that he didn't become king. Tolkien actually has a very tantalizing prophecy that says that the Dunedains have to make this choice. They either have to make the logical choice, which is screw those guys up north, we will continue with our royal line. In that case, things will keep going bad and bad and bad and bad until things get terribly bad, which is, of course, what happens at the War of the Ring eventually. Or they will make a very brave choice, in which case the light shall break out or something like that.
Yes. Now, it's probably worth talking about on the death of Andohur and his sons. Arvedai of the North Kingdom claimed the crown of Gondor as the direct descendant of Isildur and as the husband of Firiel, only surviving child of Andohur. And the claim was rejected. In this, Pelindir, the steward of King Andohur, played the chief part. The Council of Gondor answered, the crown and royalty of Gondor belongs solely to the heirs of Meneldil, son of Anarion, to whom Isildur relinquished this realm. In Gondor, this heritage is reckoned through the sons only, and we have not heard that the law is otherwise in Arnor. To which Arvedui replied, Elendil had 2 sons, of whom Isildur was the elder and the heir of his father. We have heard that the name of Elendil stands to this day at the head of the line of kings of Gondor, since he was accounted the high king of all the lands of the Dunedain. While Elendil still lived, the conjoint rule in the south was committed to his sons. But when Elendil fell, Isildur departed to take up the high kingship of his father and committed the rule in the south in like manner to the son of his brother. He did not relinquish his royalty in Gondor, nor intend that the realm of Elendil should be divided forever.
Indeed. The point I'm trying to make here is that like I said, Tolkien made this tantalizing view. This is... Can you talk about alternate history in a secondary world? In that case, if you can, it would be an interesting thing to see a sort of alternate history Gondor or alternate history Middle-earth where they actually chose to give Arvedui the title.
Right.
Could have been an interesting point. Of course, it didn't happen. What is interesting is that the northern line, as you would do, kept claiming that because of this, they were also legal heirs to the throne
kingship.
of Gondor, to the full kingship. And why this is interesting is this is the reason why Aragorn could become king of Gondor.
Exactly.
Some people might have watched the movies and missed this point because they don't make much of Arnor at all, as we've talked about.
Right.
But even people who have just read the books and maybe skip the appendices is like, but it's made very clear that Aragorn is the chieftain of the northern Dunedain. So what's going on? Well, this is why. This is why he had a sort of legal claim on the throne of Gondor, that Gondor then being in a much worse situation at the end of the War of the Ring, then chose basically to honor. They basically said, okay, we probably made a mistake 2,000 years ago. Come on, dude. You a king now.
Yep.
You king now. But the thing that interests me with Gondor and Arnor overall, and like I said, we're going to discuss this probably thematically, is that they are a great example. We are now, the Third Age is what Tolkien called sort of the mixed area. The original part, I mean, the Age of the Trees and the Age of the Stars, all the way up to the Second Age, was the mythological backstory of our world. The Fourth Age until now is like the historical part of our world, while the Third Age is the mixing. This is where real life mixes with fantasy, so to speak.
Myth.
Of course,
yes,
all of it is fantasy, but in his secondary creation, that was how it works. And this is why I love Arnor, the history of Arnor and Gondor, so, because we are moving away from the elves. There is no, and the Valar is no longer interfering, and for the longest time, Sauron is quiescent as well. Yes, the Witch King, clearly a supernatural enemy, is the ruler of Angmar, but I mean, it's not as if he cannot be defeated. He is not Sauron. If you're good enough, you can stand against him. You might not be able to kill him, but you can certainly oppose him personally if you want to. But at the same time, it's a good example now of how human kingdoms usually go. The fate of human kingdoms, modified by the secondary world, but this is how human kingdoms usually go. Either they split a twain, or in thrice at this kind, they basically, the famous saying, united we stand, divided we fall. Well, that is one way for a kingdom of humans, basically throughout all time, to fall. They disunite and are being ravaged by outside enemies. That is Arnor. Or Gondor, which is the other way to do it, a long, long, slow decline. I've always seen Gondor to a certain degree actually as the Holy Roman Empire, for what it is.
well,
But
yeah, it's pretty clear that there's a lot of parallels between.
yeah,
Gondor
the Holy Roman Empire, not the Roman Empire.
Oh, I thought you meant. Yeah, I actually see some things with ancient Rome, with
Also
external
that.
enemies. Stuff like the Wayne Riders. Visigoths.
Absolutely. But this is maybe because I'm an historian, but I love, again, I can keep hammering on about this forever. I love how real it is.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I love how much you can see this from the perspective of a historian and say, God damn it, this could have been in real life.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You don't need... Yes, there are dragons in this world. Yes, there are elves. Yes, there are orcs. Yes, there are dwarves.
Balrogs, yeah.
Sheila, Balrogs, whatever. There's all the fantasy aspects, but holy crap, is this real?
Yes.
And you don't actually need...
God, this is exactly how I feel.
It's a fantasy world with immense supernatural and superhuman or extra natural influences and powers and races and people, but they are not all not everything has to refer to these supernatural elements.
Mm-mm. No, it's
Like I said, I that's the best I can say it. It's so real, and it's amazing to me.
Yep.
You literally could take Gondor and slip it into our world, and have it there, and it would work.
You could imagine The History of Gondor by Barbara Tuchman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like this is why, and I think it's when I came across this, and unfortunately, it was the Rollmaster system, which I really didn't like. But I love the fact that somebody read the books, went through the appendices and the Silmarillion, and went, "Hey, this will make a really good tabletop role-playing game." And I found it, and I'm like, "Must play this. Have to play this. I gotta find people to play this with. Gotta play this." Thank you. click, because you wanted to be a part of the world, not just read it. Yes, you got immersed when you read about the history and you read the novels and stuff, but it's a completely different feeling when you're actually playing the MMO and you're playing tabletop, especially the MMO. And people have, and Ronan has argued with me about this, not come to blows or yelling at each other, but because I have played World of Warcraft and I have played Lord of the Rings online, and I feel way more immersed in Lord of the Rings online than I ever did playing World of Warcraft.
Well, there's so much more to it, Maddie.
It is. And I mean, it's you get to do, it's not only the fact that you get to do quests for Aragorn and Gandalf, and you get to walk with Frodo and all this, but you actually get to travel with the Grey Company. You get to visit the Golden Wood. You get to go through Moria, and it's like, oh, yeah, this is the game I need to be like playing. And wait a minute, is it 8:00 at night already?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, because you're so immersed in the world playing the game, you totally lose yourself and any semblance of what time it is.
So, question for you guys.
Yes.
So, we have done the appendices of the realms now. So, two things from each of you. Which event so far in the history of Numenor, single event, one, I know it's difficult, what single event from the history of Numenor, Gondor, and Arnor would you have wished to see in person, and which place would you like a week's vacation?
Oh, wow.
I'm not talking the Lord of the Rings books as in the primary narrative. I am talking specifically the roll of years and the sort of history of Numenor, Gondor, and Arnor.
I've got mine.
All right, go.
My week's vacation is in Minas Tirith. I am fascinated by that city. I want to explore it. I want to look all around it. I want to go and read the stuff that Gandalf read. I just want to immerse myself in that city. And the thing that I would like to see would be from the safety of, I think, a C-160 airplane.
Well, yeah. I don't mean necessarily strapping on a sword if you mention a battle.
No. Hang on.
Yeah.
From the safety of an airplane, I would like to see the sinking of Numenor.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
That would be pretty awesome. That would be pretty awesome.
To be honest, I mean, there are the place for the vacation is the difficult one, but I would pick Anuminas. If anyone doesn't know what, yes, I would.
Why?
Anuminas before the division of Arnor. Yeah. Anuminas was the great capital of Arnor. Like Minas Tirith became the capital of Gondor. Used to be Osgiliath, then Minas Tirith, but Anuminas was the first great capital of Arnor. Why? Because that was where Elendil was. You mentioned Minas Tirith. You wanted to read what Gandalf wrote, all the archives of Minas Tirith. Imagine those archives in Anuminas where Elendil sat and communicated with the elves.
Yeah.
I've always felt that they would have a lot of them would have gone to dust, and they would probably have been plundered repeatedly. But I've always imagined that one of the reasons that Aragorn wanted to go back to Anuminas after he became king was to try to see if he could find some of the old archive vaults.
Yes. I might change. I
like the idea about a week in the fires of Mordor.
Yeah.
Yes. I might change though if I could go anywhere in all the Legendarium. I would like.
Oh, that's something else. That's something completely different.
I would like to see what Gondolin looked like. Yeah,
me too. If I had to pick anywhere outside of Valinor, and as a human going there would probably be a terrible idea. Gondolin, absolutely, obviously.
Yep.
Either that or what's it called? Menegroth.
Oh yeah,
Thingol's old
Thingol's.
kingdom.
Yep. You
The thing I
would like to see the glittering caves, though. I mean, there's so much I want to see.
See, me, I'm more of the curious person. I want to spend a week in Cirith Ithil.
Cirith Ungol?
Yeah, no, it's during
or
the change.
Minas
Minas Ithil. Okay.
Minas Ithil during the change.
Okay.
Yeah, during the change to see exactly, kind of like as a spectator, not necessarily as a vacation spot.
Sure.
But during the main week of when it turned from one to the other.
Okay. It's a happening week.
Some kind of vacation spot, I would say, but fair enough.
Mainly just to observe, kind of like to be a chronicler of exactly how everything turned during that week. Just the little small details. That would be my curiosity.
Batman, that already happened.
In
the law, basically.
Yeah. For a week's worth of vacation, because food. Go visit the Shire.
Well, yeah, to a certain degree. I mean, my place that I wanted to see, the thing I wanted to see. That's just, again, I'm a military historian. I wanted to see the Battle of the Morannon. The battle that led to the siege of Barad-dûr in the War of the Last Alliance.
Yes.
I just want to see, basically...
I would like to see that too.
The last time the forces of good actually curb-stomped the forces of evil. Yeah. I would have liked to see the tactics. One thing Tolkien never really discusses is... outside of the Silmarillion, where he actually mentions it, but one thing he never really discusses is military tactics. And I would have loved to see how an army consisting of men, elves, a few dwarves, like we discussed last time, maybe even some orcs. Fought against Sauron's armies. I would have liked to see if it would have been... Because, I mean, I don't think Tolkien, who had fought a war, would fall prey to Hollywood tactics. I don't think he would have fallen prey to the concept of just two armies lining up in a big line, running at each other, and the winners eventually keep running forward.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would have loved to see the good guys curb-stomping the bad guys with Sauron, with the ring, with the ring wraith, and just to see how that happened. I think that could have been cool.
Yeah. May I also just comment to something I saw in chat? The idea of roasting s'mores in the fires of Barad-dûr. I like that idea.
I would have gone to Mount Doom, but to each their own.
Right. They both had fire.
Yep, absolutely.
They both had plenty of fire.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Are we basically done today? Is the question then?
I'm winding down.
I think so.
So what should we discuss next time? Just the rest of the finish off the appendices, or should we go to should we start moving into the hate the hate streams going over the Hobbit book and movie?
Oh,
well,
God.
I mean, we could
put it off.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is,
we can do like part 5 and then explain to people how Aragorn and Arwen actually happened.
Okay, you know what? Let's finish the appendices next time.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the dwarves, the elves in the later ages, and the tale of Aragorn and Arwen.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we'll have a very long discussion about the Shire calendar and all of the Hobbit genealogies.
Shire reckoning, Pipeweed.
Yeah.
Beginnings and
let's have a long discussion about the comparative pleasures of Hobbit pipeweed.
Yes, the anthropology of the Shire.
Yep. We could also... screw that. We'll take... The question is, Maddie, do you have access to the unfinished tales?
I think I found it in Unlimited in I don't know if they have one.
because it might be relevant. Skip the part of the unfinished tales that have to do with the Silmarillion. We can deal with that when we come to the Silmarillion streams. Obviously, Skep wants to push the Hobbit thing a bit further away, which I can't blame him. There is anger there.
Yes, there's almost a psychosis.
Yeah,
I was so hurt by those movies. I just.
But let's finish. We could do that actually, because that's very interesting. Because that's sort of the thing that most people don't know about. Let's finish the appendices next time, and then in 2 weeks, let's go to the unfinished tales part of the Lord of the Rings part of the unfinished tales.
Yeah,
because we can also then talk about the other wizards and so on
right.
without necessarily seeking directly into the Silmarillion.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And on that note, is there anything you would like to shill, Skep?
I am changing the night that I host Minions to Tuesday. Basically, Sanguine and I swapped evenings on account of his work schedule. So I will now be on Tuesdays, 10:30 Central Time, 11:30 Eastern Time on Minions of the Zoo. Thank you for letting me show that.
Okay. Sage?
Go watch my dinosaurs review things at T-Rex Reviews.
And dude, they're entertaining, and I love them.
I just reviewed Death Stranding, the video game, and I managed to convince myself not to buy it, which I otherwise thought I would.
And once again, I did not get an alert for that.
I don't know why, but it's up anyway from this Friday.
Sure that gets shared out, buddy.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you for this. Fun as always.
Yeah, very much. Thank you for tolerating me and my irrelevant comments.
And in about an hour and a half, I will be on Twitch. The name of that particular series is called Noob Going Solo. 7 Days to Die. Day 14 Blood Moon is today. So see if I survive that thing all by myself. And hope to see you guys there. Also, all of my socials, Skep socials, and Sage's socials and channels therein are in the description. You can take a walk on the geek side with us every Sunday at noon Central Standard Time, 1 Eastern. So be there or be square. Don't forget to take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and behave. But if you can't behave, at least be good at it.
Goodbye, Internet.
Goodbye, everybody.
See ya.